This is the Simply Love Jesus podcast, where we explore life and faith through the lens of one question, which is, what does it mean to simply love Jesus? My name is Caleb, and I hope you are doing super well this week. Today, we are continuing a new segment called Conversations, where we just want to bring people in and just have a conversation with them. Today, in this episode, we are talking to Nicole, who runs her own business as a wellness and health coach. You can learn more about her at wellnurturedsouls.com. But in this episode, I'm really excited that you get to hear her story, hear what God has done in her life, and just learn more about this person. And as you'll come to find out, I hope that these conversations that we will continue to have in the future will just serve as a great example on what it means to actually be the light of Jesus without so much pressure of thinking that you have to have all these verses memorized and have this whole outline. Oh, I got to tell the gospel. The reality is, you should be able to reflect the love of God without ever having to mention Jesus. The reality is, people want to know that you care before they want to know what you care about. And so because of that, when we're engaging people, the first time you meet someone, the first conversations you have, that is your evangelism. That is your ministry. People want to know that you care. They want to know that you care about them genuinely before they want to know what it is, or in our case, who it is that you care about. And so, yeah, I just hope this conversation serves as a great reminder. I think you can hear my dog sneezing. Oh, well. You okay? You got sniffles? So anyways, I hope you enjoy this conversation, and I hope that it can help serve as an example to sharing your faith with someone, and letting God work through you can be as simple as having a good and genuine conversation. I hope you guys enjoy the episode, and as always, please share this episode with one friend, and feel free, please review or rate, if you're using Apple Podcasts anyways, rate and review the podcast so that other people can discover it. Share it with other people, and you can find other ways to stay involved by visiting simplylovejesus.com. Enjoy the episode. Well, thank you again for jumping on to this podcast with me. Like I said before, we really just have the whole point of the segment is just I love bringing on different people from different life and experiences. And so really it's essentially as if we were to meet for the first time at a bar or a coffee shop or something, I'm just getting to know you. And then it just captures that whole experience, because I think it's something that really the world needs today, is to learn what it means to interact with people and how you can have conversations with people, whether you agree with them or don't agree with them or whatever. I think just all of that in general is just a needed experience in our world today. So yeah, thank you again for jumping on here. And I would love just to hear more about you, because like I said, when we last talked on the phone, I was okay, I don't want to know anything about your life, because I want to experience it all for the first time. And so let's start with, just tell me, what do you do for fun? If you have a normal day and it's all to yourself, what do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? That's such a good question. That's so interesting. And I love this whole concept of just meeting for the first time, even though it's over technology. And I love your mission with that. What I do for fun. I have 3 kids at home and a puppy. So when I have my alone time, I really just dive in and lean into self-care. And that looks different every single day.
Yeah.
So it could be taking a bath or reading or doing a journal. But it's saying it out loud, it sounds kind of silly, but that's really what makes me feel fulfilled. And that's what feels fun for me is spending time, it's always on different people, like my kids or my husband or my dog. So it's silly to say it out loud, but it feels fun to just take care of myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Why? So what is it about taking care of yourself that feels not only fun, but it feels just rewarding to you?
Well, it feels rewarding because, it doesn't feel rewarding when I get burnt out and I just get drained and crabby, with the kids or with the person at the grocery store. And when I'm able to fill up my cup, then I'm able to show up so much more different in the world and able to show up more fun, really, and bubbly and laugh. And it almost feels like it can completely alter my personality in a way. I just show up a lot more different
Yeah,
If
that's, I love that because I think you started that off really strong with just saying like, what is it about taking care of yourself that feels fun? And he goes, well, it's because I know being burnt out isn't fun.
yeah.
it's, it's that's a great way to just look at it, and I love that. And so what is it that you do? Like, what do you do for work, or what do you do for your kind of your mission? Like, what is it that you do?
I do a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Caleb, I do a lot of things. For work, I'm a health and wellness coach. So I really create space for my clients to process where they're at in life. And then eventually we end up making goals. And I get to be their cheerleader, walking alongside them and just embracing them and empowering them to keep
Mm,
going and to keep reaching their goals. And then on the side, I do a lot of advocacy work. I run a nonprofit for the schools,
mm.
and we're trying to bring health and wellness into the schools. And I'm Minnesota PTA state chair for health and safety. So I do a lot of advocating for health, wellness, a lot of mental wellness. So it
Wow.
can be a lot. It's a lot of things that I have going on. So just taking that minute to fill my cup back up so I can show up for all these other things, you have to make it fun. I
Mm.
mean, I feel like I just have to make it fun, you know?
Yeah. Well, so tell me, how did you even get into that? Like, what started that whole, because you do health and wellness essentially, and it's all about like coaching and stuff like that. But how did that happen? How did you get into that?
Well, I think we all kind of have a story of where we come at in life. And I grew up with a lot of different adversities as far as being in a fatherless home, and my
Mm,
mom raised me and my brother alone. And it was just kind of a different time where I feel like now we're investing so much into our next generations, when it comes to skills and coping. And
mm,
that's not something that was necessarily brought into my world. So I struggled a lot. I struggled a lot with anxiety, and I struggled a lot with depression. I ended up becoming addicted to different substances. I got pregnant when I was 14 years old.
mm,
I had a lot of self harm and suicidal attempts, and it got really deep. I brush over it a little bit because I don't want it to feel too heavy, but it was really, really heavy. And I went, I grew up Catholic, so I went to church. I had the support of a therapist. I had the support of medications, and it felt like there was something missing, and I couldn't figure out what was missing. And then I stumbled across these amazing people from church, and one of them was a coach. And then this whole door opened up,
mm.
and I just leaned right into it, and it felt right. It felt like this is work that I want to do, not for income, but this is work that I want to do in this world. I want to be
Mm.
able to support people.
That's amazing. Well, and so tell me a little bit about like that early journey of, you talk about how you didn't have like a father in the home, and then as you kind of grew up, you kind of stumbled into kind of just um you stumbled into all these different either substance abuse and all that stuff. Where do you think along the lines early on, like what triggered you to kind of fall into all of that? Was it friends, or was it just the people you were around? Was it maybe just something that was brought into your home that you just kind of stumbled into?
That's really interesting because I grew up in a very upper class neighborhood. I
Mm-hmm.
grew up in the church. I grew up in this almost ideal environment from the outside, if you
Yeah.
will. And there's something about being younger that I didn't feel heard, and I didn't
Mm.
feel understood. I felt like I was the kind of the sore thumb in the school or in the neighborhood. And that made it really hard for me to connect. My mom was always working, so there wasn't quite that connection with any parent. And it made it
Mm.
hard for me to connect with peers because I kind of felt like I was down here and everybody else was kind of up here,
Mm.
and they were either they sinned less than I did or they had more money than my family did. And I really think it was maybe the lack of truly feeling connected to something or somebody. I feel like that might have had a big role in that.
Hmm. Yeah. So who was it that like introduced you to all that stuff that kind of just like what opened the door for that? Because it wasn't just like all of a sudden one day you just decided, oh, I'm just gonna start, doing this and drinking this and going here and going there. Where was it? Do you remember a time and place that you felt like that's where that door opened for the first time?
I think it was slowly. I did go to a private school from about first to fifth grade.
Hmm.
And that was a very small, intimate, it was kind of family there. And then I transitioned into a public school where everybody knew each other and everybody knew the rhythm and the flow of the school.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the people that I did connect to were kind of the other people that were struggling too.
Hmm. Yeah. So some of the first friends that you met there were people who were already kind of struggling and were already going through that thing. And so just by hanging out with them, you naturally were also getting exposed to these things as well, right?
Slowly, yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
And then just over time, you look and you're like, whoa, what happened to my life?
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so how long did that kind of period last for until you found where you kind of up until the day where you kind of woke up and realized like, oh man, what has my life kind of come to? How long was that period?
I would say that was probably from ninth grade. I struggled with a lot of like anxiety and depression before all of this, but it started to snowball in ninth grade. And interestingly enough, I feel like it lasted until I was about 25.
So what was it that tell me more about like the day if you remember or just even the kind of period of time where that kind of all came about. So you're like 25 years old and then what changed? What happened?
What changed? I hit a rock bottom. I hit such a rock bottom. Um, I don't know if you can visualize, they call it a 175. It's a liter and a half of tequila. And I would drink through that every 2 or 3 days,
Mm.
which is a lot of alcohol. And I had my 3 kids at that time. And I didn't know anything about postpartum depression. I just knew that I felt very empty and I felt
Mm.
very dark. And it was kind of that low moment of my life um, where I literally wanted to be done. I had these 3 beautiful children. I worked in special education and had the most amazing job with the most amazing people. And I still didn't feel like there was anything worth living for. And
Mm.
so I wrote a note to my husband and I left and I had a plan to not come back. I just couldn't deal with life anymore.
Mm.
And there was something in that moment. There was something in that moment that I felt like was my last moment. I also felt like miraculously turned into almost my first moment of really living. It was
Mm.
like this overwhelming feeling of light. And that's the only thing that I can explain it as, where
Yeah.
it was just like this insane shift of going from like so much hurt and so much pain, and I was going to end it all, to I'm just going to fill you up with light and you're going to do amazing things. And it was within a matter of seconds that
Mm.
everything feels like it changed from me. And then from that day forward, life has never been the same.
Yeah. Well, let's talk more about like that moment. What was it about that moment? You said it happens like in a matter of seconds, but like what what do you think why do you think it was that way? Like and it's just like click of a finger and something just switched. Like what happened?
I feel like everybody might have a different theory of what that
Mm-hmm.
might look like. Maybe like a neurologist might say it's a chemical reaction, or
Mm.
a psychologist might say that it's like a bipolar personality switch type thing.
Yeah.
And
Well, it
I
couldn't be a
really,
bipolar personality switch, because if that's the case, then you would have flipped back at some point. You know?
you would think, yes, that's a good point. And that's really interesting because I have been diagnosed with all of these different things. And in my heart, there's something so much bigger than what we can even understand,
Yeah.
and it feels like it was something so much more divine than quote unquote a mental illness, or quote
Mm.
unquote like a chemical change. Like it was something so much bigger than what I am, and
Yeah.
so much bigger than what this world was, that just grabbed me and held me so warmly in its arms that it was like, okay, I'm okay now. I'm
Yeah.
safe.
Well, I mean, it makes sense though, that being the only real rational explanation, because any other physical explanation would be if it was bipolar or if it was this chemical reaction, then those things not only are predictable, but it would, if you're following that consistency, it would have changed again because it would have followed that pattern. But the difference with this one is not only did you have this switch, but that switch was consistent. And because how long has it been since that happened?
Um, Probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing
Yeah.
is the doctors, they brought me to the psych ward because of the situation.
Yeah.
And they put me on all of these medications that actually made me feel really icky and like really gross. And my personality was gone. And then once I got off of those medications, it was like, I'm alive.
Yeah.
Alive again. This is
That's
amazing.
yeah. And I would say, yeah, so you have 4 or 5 years that you're separated from all this stuff. So it's definitely not like this bipolar thing, because if that's the case, you just would have switched right back over and something bad could have happened. And there's plenty of bad things that have happened since then. So it's like something bad happens and it all goes through the haywire again. And so, but that didn't happen. It's been consistent. And I wonder if it's just because, I believe that the scriptures are so evident about teaching us that the number one problem in our world today and is us believing that we can handle the problems of life within ourselves, and thinking that we can figure this out. I've got this. It's my problem. I'll fix it. I'll figure it out. I've got this. And it's the moment that you, in your sense, you literally happened. In one sense, the moment that you were like dead is the moment that you actually came alive. Like the moment those who try to find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life will find it. And so it's in that same sense that like you kind of came to this end point where it was the end of yourself, and in your head you're like, all right, cool, like in my mind I'm dead. But in that same moment, the moment that you fully given up is when it's also in the same moment that you found life. And now that, granted, now everyone is we should never recommend that kind of conclusion for anyone, in the sense that, oh yeah, just get to the point where you just want to, take everything away. Don't ever recommend that to anyone. But for you, it's a very specific circumstance and a very specific and incredible story of just truly how it's like, those who try to find their life will lose it. But those, when you let your life go, when you lose your life and you let go of controlling your life, which is really the whole point of it, is not just like these images and these metaphors of just dying to yourself and let your life die. Not about literally losing your life. It's about letting go of control. And the moment you let go of control and you give control over to Jesus, like that's when you find your life. That's when that light comes into your life, and it can give you momentum and it gives you peace and joy, because these are things you can't produce in and of yourself. And so that's truly, truly incredible story. It's been 4 or 5 years now, and now you're making progress towards changing other people's lives as well, which is also incredible.
I love how you said all of that, because that's just my experience, and it doesn't always have to be that extreme. And that's exactly what it is, though. It's almost the death of my own ego, right? Because it's not about me anymore. It's
Yeah.
not about my purpose. And that's exactly what it was you're going to live a great life, but it's by God's will almost. You know what I
Mm.
mean? And the things you're going to do is out of God's will. And it has absolutely hardly anything to do with you, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Which is just how I perceive it. And so when it comes to my kids, it really put me in an interesting spot of looking at the generational pains that happened before me, and then where I was, and then where my kids were going to be. And it put me in this place of reflecting, how am I going to walk through this life so that my children don't have to experience that to that extreme as I did?
Mm.
You know? And so it's almost been a walking, and I love how you bring up Jesus, because I have a group of girlfriends that I talk to, and we really talk a lot of how can we walk more like Jesus for our children and for the people around us. And so that's something that's so prevalent in my life when I try to raise my kids and guide my children through life. How can I walk the most like Jesus so that I can be a good example for them, and so that I can show them the love that I feel like the whole world should have access to, that love, and I feel like they do. It's just finding it or discovering it. I don't know what that looks like, but my kids are beautiful. My kids, they're something else. And I know I'm a little bit biased.
It's a good bias.
It is. Like I said before, I got pregnant at 15. So I have one child that's about 10 years older than the other ones. And they struggle a little bit more with mental health and stuff, and we're working through it. And it's really interesting to see how she's a reflection of who I was before all of this stuff, and she's doing amazing now too. And it's really interesting to see how my younger kids that were only 1 and 2 when this whole situation in my life happened, it's really interesting how they're being raised and how they've almost been raised in a different way, almost by a different mom. I'm the same person, but it's almost like a different mom. They're so smart. And my oldest one is very smart too. And they're so like free thinkers in a way, and they love God so much, and they love Jesus so much. Even if we haven't gone to church for 6 months because of the pandemic, they're still talking about God. They're still sitting there, and I will be in the room and I'll look over and I'll see them praying. And I'm not telling, I was raised, you have to go, and nothing against the religion I was raised in. I was raised Catholic, but we had very traditional steps of what we had to do in order to be worthy, in a way, is my perspective. And so it's very interesting in not pushing religion and not pushing God's will and not pushing Jesus onto my children. It is so rewarding to look over and see them praying, because I'm like, wow. I mean, I did that because I'm their parent, but I didn't do that. That was all God working through me. So it's really cool.
That's amazing. So what do your kids do for fun these days?
My one oldest plays hockey, so that's a lot of fun.
There you go.
Yes. My middle child, he loves everything. He just loves socializing and being around people. And he loves talking, deep talks, like, really, really intriguing talks for a 6-year-old. And then my 5-year-old girl, she's just makeup and shopping and dancing, gymnastics.
That's fun.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun.
That is amazing. So now that you're focusing on like wellness coaching and all this stuff, so what are your goals for the next 5 years? The last 5 years have been really life change for you. What do the next 5 years look like?
Yes. The past 5 years have been about getting myself straight, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like all the pieces were blown away from the puzzle. So I spent the last 5 years trying to piece all those pieces back together. And what does this mean? And refinding my faith, which has been huge because I fell away from the church. And so this was a really interesting way to gain such a close connection to God, because
Yeah.
I've never felt this close before. It's really cool. So the past 5 years have been a lot of building my life back together in a way that makes sense
Hmm.
for me. And
Yeah.
then my next 5 years, I feel in a spot where I want to hold that space for other people to do the same thing.
Yeah. Which is great, because I think that the most important thing is, the number one way that we get to where we are in life with the problems that we have in life, the reason that we get there is because we try to hold on to things. Like, we try, it's like, well, this is mine, I want to hold on to it. And yet oftentimes, if we're not careful, we can do the very same thing with our faith. Like, oh, I'm in a really good place, I just want to stay in this place. But the beautiful thing is that what God wants to do in your life is, now that he's changed your life, it's like, cool, these past 5 years is about changing you. Now let's use the next 5 years to be about changing others. Now let's take what has been worked in your life and use it to work into other people's life. Use it to influence and inspire other people to get better and to get healthy and to get well and all these things. And I just love that. I think that's a great focus to have as a transition. This, let me take what has happened in my life, now let me use it to help other people's life and just keep pushing that forward. I think that's absolutely incredible. So for those who ever may listen to this message, if you had one word of encouragement or just one thing you want to put into the minds of other people, what would it be?
It would be, that's a very easy answer for me. The one thing that I wish I could tell everybody is, you are worthy just as you are. No
Hmm.
matter how broken you feel, matter how empowered you feel, no matter what day you're on, good or bad, you're so worthy. No matter
Hmm.
what, no exceptions.
Yeah. Worthy of what?
Love and
Yeah.
life and God, like, God loves you no matter what. There's not these conditions necessarily that I feel like we have to meet in order to be
Hmm.
worthy of his love and to
Yeah.
be worthy of loving ourselves. And that's why my self-care and my self-love moments, I feel like, are so fun, because we are good enough to receive and give
Hmm.
at the same time. And you're worthy of everything. Anything that you want or anything that you don't want, you're good enough.
Hmm.
You're
Yeah.
good enough for
What
it.
do you think gives people that, like, worth? If everyone's like worthy, like, what gives them that? What about them makes them worthy? You know?
In my opinion,
Yeah. Yeah. Go for it.
just that you're a creation of God
Hmm.
who is just perfect in every imperfect way too in this world. And just the fact that you are chosen to be here and you are a creation of something bigger than you that is so light and so beautiful and so much truth, I think that makes you worthy. You're
Yeah. Well,
here.
what a great answer too, because it's literally like, you have worth. Like, even the opening pages of the Bible is like, humanity was created in God's image. Like, you're image bearers of God, and you were created to be image bearers of God for that, for a lot of reasons. But one of those reasons is because as a mere reflection of God's image, like, man, that's what helps. That's what gives you value and worth. Like, as you said, it's merely because you are created, because you are alive, because you are living, gives you intrinsic value. And God gives that, it says you are worthy because you were created as the pinnacle of creation. Humanity is the peak of creation. And so I just love that. I think that's such a beautiful answer. And it's a great word of encouragement for other people as well. So for people who are hearing this and they want to learn more about you, they want to learn more about your story, they want to learn more about how you can potentially help them, where would they go?
Oh, I'm all over. I'm all over. Um, my handle on all of my websites and social media is well.nurtured.souls. So
Mm,
well nurtured souls, or just typing in Nicole Patraw.
that's
And
awesome.
depending on what platform, like Instagram, for instance, I'm pretty open. I'm pretty transparent when it comes to my story. I put it out in little bits and pieces because I don't want to overwhelm anybody, because some of
Mm.
the pieces are dark. But I also feel like it's important, especially on Instagram for some reason, to share my story, because we all have a story. And don't I don't like the thought of people feeling alone in their suffering.
Mm.
We're all together,
Yeah.
you know. So I share a lot of my personal story on Instagram, and then on my website, I'm posting a lot more of like resources and tools about food and about mindset and sleep and all of the good things. Yeah,
Yeah, that's good.
all
And
the
what's
good.
your website called?
Wellnurturedsouls.com.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, Nicole, thank you so much again for jumping on this, having this conversation, and just getting a chance for me to hear your story and be encouraged, and just for other people to hear your story and to be encouraged, and just to have such a beautiful story about literally what it means to die to yourself and find life in Christ. Like, I think it's just your story illustrates that so beautifully for other people. And it's beautiful to hear how even just the way that you carry yourself has such an influence on your kids, and the people that you work with. And I'm really hoping that through this, like, other people will be able to reach out, and more people will be able to discover you and your story and what you provide for others. So thank you again so much. And I really hope you just had a good time just being able to talk and get to learn and stuff.
I did. I thank you so much for having me here and just holding this conversation, because it turned into a very beautiful conversation. And
Mm.
for just two strangers meeting and just having a conversation from the love of God and the love of Jesus, people crave conversations like these. You
Mm.
know, people crave to feel heard and to feel this story. And for you to come in and to be able to fill, I don't want to say a void, but kind of filling that void of people wanting to feel heard and
Mm.
wanting to have these conversations. This is just the beauty that comes from that.
Yeah.
So thanks for putting this together, inviting me onto your podcast, and it was so nice to talk to you.